Today is Saturday, December 17th. The holidays are meant to be spent with people we love, but when a loved one isn't there anymore, it can make the holiday season especially painful for the people left behind. And it can be hard to know what to say when someone you care about is grieving. So to help us all navigate this holiday season with grace, even in the face of grief, we're chatting with author and public speaker Rebecca Soffer. After losing both of her parents within just a few years, Soffer co-founded Modern Loss. It's an organization that offers encouraging and meaningful content and community addressing the long arc of grief. Her latest best-selling book is The Modern Loss Handbook, an interactive guide to moving through grief and building your resilience. Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, where we provide all the day's news in 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. It's now time for today's Special Edition Saturday. Rebecca, thank you for coming on the Newsworthy.
Thanks so much for having me today.
So let's start with the reason we are talking about this now, and that is that the holidays are coming up. I know that you've written that the holidays can be especially triggering for people who have lost loved ones. Can you describe what that experience might be like for people and any ideas for coping around the holidays?
Sure. I think that the holidays are already inherently a very stressful time for people. I know that even when everything seemed perfect in my life, the holidays were very stressful. I went through it like deer in the headlights. Now just imagine that you're folding loss into the mix. That's a whole other ballgame. And by the way, loss can stem from a grief that comes from everything from friendship loss to divorce to job loss. There are so many different layers of loss that we can experience, especially though when we are experiencing loss due to the death of a loved one. This is a time when their absence feels even more highlighted because the holidays can kind of act like a time machine, right? We can remember very easily where we were maybe last year or a few years ago when that person was in the mix, when that person was at that place in the dinner table or at that celebration or at that holiday brunch. And so these times are kind of like extra emotionally charged because they're just really insulting for those of us living with loss. And it's hard to muddle through, especially when we're surrounded by so many people who are seemingly insistent on being quote unquote festive.
What's your, top tip for coping around the holidays?
I think that my top tip is to embrace the word no. I think that we give into peer pressure a lot. I'm a people pleaser. So if I feel like I have an invitation and it's somebody's party, they're putting a lot of effort into it, I feel like I should say yes, but I shouldn't always say yes. And I think especially for those who are listening, who are living that first year of loss, it can be so hard. And you really do need to check in with yourself. And sure, make the plan to go to the party, make the plan to do the thing. But if you wake up on that day and you are not feeling it, you need to give yourself full permission to call an audible, to say, this is not what I need today. Saying no allows yourself to say yes to things that actually nourish your need to kind of feel griefy, be in the moment, be it go for a walk with a friend or volunteer somewhere so that your mind is somewhere else and you're not in a setting that feels familiar, but you still feel like you're performing something that's helpful to others, or even just like sitting at home and watching a movie. Only you know what you need, and actually only you know what you need on any given moment. And if somebody has a problem with the fact that you're not showing up and you're not, taking a place around the table, even if it's around the family table, they need to understand why you aren't. And if they can't, it is what it is. You have to be good to you.
From that other perspective, that person that maybe knows that they're going to see a friend or family member this holiday season that has lost someone recently or is grieving, people often, have good intentions but may feel awkward or don't know what to say. So what is your advice from that perspective of how do you approach someone in the best way possible?
I think a lot of us, especially around the holidays, we're just so insistent on twinkly lights and presents and like clinking champagne glasses. And we don't want to bring up what can be construed as a real bummer to someone, like the fact that someone died. But the thing is that nobody who is grieving forgets that they're grieving, that they're living with a loss. You are not going to remind someone that their person died, that their pet died. You're not going to be, say, bringing up old wounds when you ask them how they're doing because their person or their pet is not here this season. You're going to instead simply make them feel seen and acknowledged and more comfortable. And so I really encourage people who care about others going through things to say, how are you doing right now? Like, how are you feeling right now? I know that you're living with this thing. What's going on for you? What are you missing? Is there anything you want to remember that makes you feel better? I'd love to do it with you. These are very easy ways to provide support that actually means something to somebody.
And I know you said, how are you doing? But I've also heard you say before that how are you is not the best question. Can you address that, or is it now?
Sure. I mean, I think I said, how are you doing? But also like specifically couching it within the holidays, saying that this is the holiday season. How are you doing right now? I think saying like, how are you? It's like a very blanket statement. When you couch something within the moment, like, oh, I know that like this is our annual, holiday party and Dan is not here. How are you doing right now? Like, how's this week for you right now? I'm thinking of him. I'm thinking of you. Anchor it within a moment in time. This is a time when emotions are very, very charged for people. This is a time when people are feeling extra vulnerable. They're feeling extra pressured to kind of put on a happy face and kind of like muscle their way through the holidays. So just make them feel seen, addressing the fact that that this could be a hard time and you're here to listen.
Besides the holidays, let's say someone's returning to work that you're not super close with, but you want to let them know that you care. What do you recommend?
Grief does not respect business hours. It's just super rude like that. And so when you have somebody who is living with loss and they're returning to work, albeit remotely or in real life, they are really nervous to go back into that environment because since the last time you saw them, something really big has changed in their life. And they are very well aware that like everybody is talking about it or thinking about it. And so I always say, when you are a coworker, you don't have to be like intimate professional buddies. Say, hey, it's so good to see you. John, it's so good to see you. Make it clear that like, you weren't just spending the last hour talking about John's coming in. Things have been weird. What are we going to say? No, John walks into the office. Say, John, it's really good to see you. Because guess what? That's what they need to feel. They need to feel like this is a safe and comfortable space that they are welcome and wanted in. And then, of course, like you can go further if you're in a one-on-one conversation, like, I am really sorry. I heard that something really hard happened. It sounds really awful. And I'm so sorry this happened to you. You don't have to say, I'm sorry for your loss. You don't have to fix it. You just can say, you are so sorry that something really hard happened in somebody's life. And if you are a close colleague, I highly recommend thinking about what could help that person and offering it. You don't have to be a psychologist to provide meaningful support at the workplace. You just have to care. You just have to know what it feels like to go through something hard. So say, hey, like once a week, can we do lunch? Or hey, here's a code word. When you text me this code word, I'm going to know that you need to take a walk around the block. And as soon as I can, we'll do it. Think about what you can provide that person and offer it to them.
Of course, it's not just the holidays or your first time gathering with people after a loss that can be hard. Grief hits at unexpected moments too. Rebecca Soffer shares her take and tips to help you cope when you find yourself wanting to cry in aisle 5. Plus, we all grieve, so why does it feel so awkward and uncomfortable to talk about sometimes? That's still ahead. But first, let's take a quick break to thank our sponsor, ZocDoc. For some people, the upcoming new year will mean changes to your health insurance, and sometimes that can mean your go-to doctors are suddenly out of network. ZocDoc can help. ZocDoc is a free app that shows you doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them. It'll help you sort through doctors that are in network and in your neighborhood. Plus, the mobile app is as easy as ordering a ride to a restaurant, allowing you to search, find, and book doctors with a few taps. You can choose to book an appointment in person or remotely. Every month, millions of people use ZocDoc, and I like it whenever I need to find a new doctor, too. Go to ZocDoc.com/newsworthy and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then start your search for a top-rated doctor today. Many are available within 24 hours. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/newsworthy, ZocDoc.com/newsworthy. And thanks to our other sponsor, Rocket Money. Did you know the average person has 12 paid subscriptions? And that most Americans spend up to $200 a month on paid subscriptions. That's right, you could be wasting hundreds of dollars each month on subscriptions you don't even know about. Many are lured in by free trials, but then forget to cancel. I know that's happened to me, from Spotify to Hulu to ClassPass and more. Well, there's this app I love using now that takes care of that for me. It's called Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill. Overall, Rocket Money found the most canceled subscriptions are Amazon Prime, Audible, Hulu, and DoorDash DashPass. Any of those sound familiar to you? Well, get this, the average person saves up to $720 a year with Rocket Money. And to cancel a subscription for most services, all you have to do is press cancel, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Get rid of useless subscriptions with Rocket Money now. Go to rocketmoney.com/newsworthy. Seriously, it could save you hundreds per year. That's rocketmoney.com/newsworthy. Cancel your unnecessary subscriptions right now at rocketmoney.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to my conversation with author Rebecca Soffer. And also, besides the holidays, for the person that is grieving, what do you recommend when maybe a different trigger or reminder hits unexpectedly and maybe even makes you feel like you want to cry, whether that's at work or just a public place?
Well, as somebody who has cried her way up and down the 123 subway line in Manhattan over the course of many years, I can attest to the fact that the grief triggers, the waves, if you will, they come and they go, and they come and they go for a really long time. When you live with loss, that is a 24/7, 365 thing for the rest of your life. I'm not trying to say that every single second is going to be the worst second ever. It won't be. I'm just saying that your grief is a dynamic thing because you're alive and it shifts and ebbs and flows as you go through life. And so even if 5 years on, you're in the supermarket, right? And you're reaching for a bottle of syrup and you're remembering that time in aisle 5 with your mom when you were a kid, when something happened, you can just be knocked down unexpectedly, emotionally, and just find yourself kind of crying in aisle 5. It can happen. So I think that the most important thing to remember is that these things, they are totally normal. People kick themselves because they feel like they're not adhering to a linear timeline with regard to grief. But grief is not linear. Loss is not linear. It's sometimes 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. And so I encourage people, if they find themselves kind of knocked down by one of these waves or these sneak attacks, as I call them, really try and take some very deep breaths. Try and anchor yourself within the moment, because it is very easy when we get hit by a grief trigger to get yanked into the past or suddenly very deeply worry about the future. This is where mindfulness techniques can come in really handy. Anchoring yourself in a moment, doing a technique that's called maybe 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you think of 5 things and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 that you can alternately hear, smell, see, and touch and taste, right? These are practices that really yank you back to the moment, and they also occupy your brain so that you're not spiraling into something else. And I really encourage people to develop these coping mechanisms so that they have a toolbox full of them, because grief it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
So for anyone grieving this holiday season, what do you recommend for how they should communicate to their friends and family members what it is they actually need?
I think a lot of us tend to wait around for somebody to bring up our loss and bring up our person, and then we get really frustrated when that doesn't happen. And holiday time, we are especially sensitive to this kind of stuff. I want to advise anybody who is heading into the holidays and feeling very much like they really do need to talk about their grief, talk about their loss, talk about their person. Just even remember one thing: to not wait around for anybody else to do it, to not stand on ceremony. The fact of the matter is that no one can really exactly intuit what it is that you need in terms of support at any given moment. And it is on us to figure out how to speak up for ourselves and our needs. And so if your mom died, 5 years ago, and you're heading into Christmas dinner and you really want to talk about her, maybe consider sending an email to your family a few days beforehand saying, listen, I really want to talk about mom at the table. We don't have to talk about her all of dinner, but here's what I'd like to do. I want to go around the table and say one memory each. If you want to opt out, but this is what I really need. I really need to feel connected to her during this moment. So let's do it. And so, there are so many different creative ways where you can bring somebody's memory into a celebration that forevermore will be bittersweet. And I encourage you to do it, because if you don't, then that just makes you feel more disconnected to their memory, and that doesn't help anybody.
And grief is also something that everyone will experience at some point or another. So why is grief so hard to talk about or makes people uncomfortable?
We don't really like remembering that our time on earth is limited. We don't like imagining that this stuff is going to happen to people we care about. We shy away from asking for details from somebody who is really deeply grieving. I think because subconsciously we think that if we somehow don't know some of these details, then we can not have those things happen to us. Or conversely, if we do know some details, like was someone wearing a seatbelt? Were they a smoker? That somehow we can use that information to prevent that from happening to us and our loved ones. And also in the United States, we like fixing things. We like feeling like we're being effective. We kind of put it on ourselves to be the fixers for other people's pain. And so what ends up happening is that no one can do that. No one can rise to that occasion. And so we kind of fail, not through any fault of our own, but because we're really misconstruing what grief is, which is an ongoing, very amorphous thing that is also very normal to struggle with. And so if we could only embrace the fact that all of us are grieving, like you can throw a stone anywhere and hit somebody who's living with a loss, be it job loss, identity loss, loss of dreams for the future. If we could only understand that the thing that pulls us all together are our losses, then I think that we would cut each other a break a lot more and be able to support each other a lot more.
Well, thank you so much to Rebecca Soffer for joining us today on this important topic. Be sure to get her book, The Modern Loss Handbook, and you can follow Modern Loss on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, or sign up for the Modern Loss Substack newsletter for more. If you found this conversation helpful or know someone who might benefit from hearing it, we encourage you to share this episode, whether that's through email, text, or on social media. Or if you're interested in practicing more mindfulness and gratitude this holiday season, you can check out our episode from November 26th to help you in that process. And as always, join us each day, Monday through Friday, for a new 10-minute roundup of the news you need to know. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend.